I absolutely think that it could have been Sasquatch related. Hello and welcome to Squatchspot.com. I'm Darrin Smith, and I hope that all of you out there are doing okay and that you and your loved ones are well. This global pandemic that we are dealing with has been an absolute challenge for many. Here in California, what started off as a 5-week lockdown has turned into a 5-month closure for me. And to be absolutely honest with you guys, my mindset and general disposition has been pretty glum and my motivation lacking. But I'm happy to report that I've made some changes to my general life approach that I think have dramatically lifted my spirits, and I am happy to report that right now I am out in the field on the trail and heading deep into the backcountry to conduct some Sasquatch research. I'm also going to be heading into my camera project area to retrieve the data collected from the memory cards, and I'll also be deploying additional cameras in that area. So there's definitely a lot of stuff happening on this episode. So I want to share with you a few of those life hacks that I've made real quick, just so that if any of you guys out there are struggling emotionally through this challenging time, you may consider giving some of these approaches a try. One of which that I think was the major contributor to my overall mental disposition was watching the news. I generally watch the news every morning with my morning coffee, and that constant bombardment of negativity, chaos, and crisis was just becoming a little overwhelming for me. So I've dramatically reduced the amount of news that I was watching, and I think that greatly affected my general mindset and optimism. So I would encourage you to consider that one. Also, I try to make it a point to get outside daily, to do a little exercise, and to also eat healthy. And I think by focusing on all those areas, I have been able to dramatically increase my positive mindset. And I would encourage any of you who may be suffering emotionally through this crisis to consider some of those approaches. And also, if you are dealing with something overwhelming, absolutely reach out for help from friends, loved ones, or professional counseling, because this crisis that we are experiencing is something very out of the ordinary. And I think it's very important that right now we all stay safe and take care of one another. So that is very important. But right now, I am thrilled to be out in the field, to be surrounding myself with nature, and to be conducting some Sasquatch research. And right now, the top priority for me is to get my camp set up and to get some dinner going, because it's going to get chilly here pretty soon, and I want to be ready for some night maneuvers. And so that's the top priority for me right now. But there's also some other things I'll be sharing with you on this episode, one of which is a little concerning. It's some stuff that's happening over in the area where my incident site from last March occurred. And I'm definitely going to be sharing with you guys as well. So we're going to get to that, but first let's go ahead and get the camp set up and to get some dinner going. Now let's get a lay of the land. We're investigating a valley in the backcountry that has had numerous sightings over the years, both within the valley and the surrounding area. The valley is approximately 4 miles long and roughly 1 mile wide, and it is completely enclosed by various environmental barriers, which makes it virtually impossible to exit the valley by any other means other than the following exit points. For all intents and purposes, there are only 3 viable exits from this valley. The first exit is a very narrow trail which leads along a treacherous precipice and eventually leads up to the ridgeline that gives access to higher elevation areas as well as plenty of backcountry wilderness. The second exit is a very narrow choke point that leads down to a number of larger, lower elevation valleys. And the third exit is another very narrow corridor that leads to another ridge and forested wilderness. Since I've been investigating the area, which began in 2007, I have received a number of eyewitness reports, and I myself have had some incredible happenings. In 2009, while conducting a follow-up investigation of a recent sighting, I backpacked up to the ridgeline and into the backcountry, where I stumbled upon fresh 14-inch footprints. I followed the tracks for several yards, and while I was examining them, I encountered a number of very aggressive sounding whoops coming from the forest near me. Alone and in a very remote location, with little field experience, I decided to pull out of the area. However, I've returned to this area every year following my encounter to do some trekking and to continue my investigation of the area, and I discovered footprint impressions on a number of occasions while on the ridge, and in 2012, while moving through the valley, I heard a very loud wood knock to my left, and as I turned to look in that direction, I caught movement out of the corner of my right eye, and as I turned to my right, I saw a juvenile Sasquatch roughly 50 yards from me move up from the brush and quickly retreat into the forest. Though the sighting was fleeting and the figure was obstructed by the forest environment, I was very confident this was not a man in a costume. The hair-covered creature was very oddly proportioned. It had very long legs and arms on a lanky frame. It was walking slouched, but upright, and its movements were very panicked and reckless as it barreled through the brush and out of my line of sight. This experience left me absolutely breathless, and although I was passionate in my pursuits to find Sasquatch, this encounter absolutely fueled the flames of my quest for answers, And once again, I've returned to this valley to continue my investigation. Okay, so it's getting rather late. I've been out and about flooring the area, and I haven't seen any evidence of animal activity. However, I can hear it. I can hear a pack of coyotes moving about. They seem in relatively close proximity to me, but it could be a little misleading because of the valley that I'm in at the moment. And what's very strategic about this valley, I'm not going to elaborate too much because I don't want to give away the location, is the fact that this valley is completely enclosed. So you have this valley that has these 3 choke points that are exits, and there's some researchers out there that believe that Sasquatch will push animals into valleys to kind of corral them there and trap them there, and then use those animals as a food source. And this particular valley would be a perfect opportunity to create such a feeding area. And this is the location that I had my initial encounter with the Sasquatch. I was at that higher elevation. I had gone up that trail and I was at that exit point, on top of that exit point, and I encountered Sasquatch up there, and I had a sighting in the valley near the choke point that's leading down to these lower elevations. So the Sasquatch are definitely in this valley. They could very well be using this valley as a Bigfoot refrigerator. There's plenty of deer in the valley, and there's definitely plenty of animals in this valley. And I'm always interested in coming up here and conducting my research. I also have my camera project in close proximity to this area. So it's definitely a good location. And at the moment, the stars are absolutely breathtaking. It's getting a little chilly. I don't know if you can hear the wind picking up, but it's getting quite late. I've been at it for quite a while now, and I'm getting a little chilly. That's one crutch that I have is I usually get incredibly cold at these higher elevations. So I'm usually bringing a number of thermal layers, and I am anxious to get back to my camp to put on a couple more thermal layers. So I am going to head back to my camp. I'm going to continue to monitor the area. Generally, what I like to do is wake up a number of times throughout the evening just to do a couple of sweeps with the FLIR to see if there's anything around. But depending on how much sleep I need, we'll see if I'll be getting up tonight because I'm absolutely exhausted. It was a really long hike to get up here, and it's going to be another long day tomorrow. So we'll see how it goes, but hopefully I'll be aware of my surroundings, and if I hear anything, I can get out and sweep the area, do some FLIRing and so on. But at the moment, I think I am going to head back to camp and hunker down in the tent for a bit, get a couple more layers on, and just relax for the time being. So good morning. Definitely an interesting evening last night. There was a lot of activity around the camp, and I was definitely up through most of the evening last night. I heard what sounded like a car door closing or a trunk, a very dramatic, like closing door sound that really caught my attention, and it woke me up. And this was probably just prior to 3 o'clock. And after I heard that sound, I was really paying attention to the noises I was hearing in the woods, and it became very dramatic. I heard what sounded like large things being thrown near my tent, like these thudding sounds that sounded like rocks landing in close proximity to the tent. And one actually hit the tent, but the one that hit the tent wasn't so heavy because it didn't make such a dramatic sound. It just kind of bounced off the tent. I will point out that it wasn't windy last night. It's picked up a little bit this morning. So I don't think it was a pine cone or anything dropping from the tree. And taking into consideration the other activity I was hearing last night, I'm not thinking it was something that the wind has shaken loose from the tree. Another sound that I was hearing around the camp at a relative distance, it wasn't right up on the tent, it was at a little bit of a distance, was the stomping sound. It sounded like a single woof, and it sounded like it was hitting the ground because it was creating this thud sound, kind of like what those what I thought were rocks that were landing next to the tent were creating that thud. But this was a different sound. This sounded like a woof, like something had stomped on the ground in relatively close proximity to the camp, but not like those other sounds that were landing right in very close proximity to the tent. I also heard that car door, that slamming noise, at least another 2 times at different directions. And for sure there's no cars out here, and I can't imagine there's any treasure chests that are hiding in the woods here. So those sounds were very dramatic. It really did catch my attention. I didn't pick up the camera because the camera was a ways from me, and I didn't want to turn it on because it does produce some light, and I didn't want to do anything to dissuade the activity that was happening around my camp. So I did grab my Zoom audio recorder and I got that going. So hopefully we captured something on the audio recorder. But also I didn't want to get out of the tent because I knew by the time that I did so, whatever was in close proximity to me would definitely had moved on. And I didn't want to risk the audio recording that I was establishing. I wanted to get that car door sound on audio, and I didn't want to do anything to jeopardize the possible audio evidence I was collecting to get out of the tent with an off chance of catching something on the floor. So I stayed hunkered down the tent, and all of this activity went on from about 3 o'clock until roughly 4:30, and it was pretty continuous. So I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, and I'm thinking based on the activity that I had last night, I absolutely think that it could have been Sasquatch related. I'm anxious to get out of the tent and get looking for any sort of physical evidence to support that. But I don't think I'm going to leave where my camp is this time. I don't think I'm going to, my plans were to pack up and to head up onto the ridge line. But I think based on what happened last night, I'm going to stay at this location. We are in the valley, which is really an ideal location to be in. So I'm going to stay here for at least another night here to see if I can get any sort of activity to happen again tonight, because it was definitely out of the ordinary. It was definitely something intriguing for me, and I absolutely think that it could have been Sasquatch related. I spent quite a bit of the morning investigating the camp area to see if I could find any evidence to shed some light on what had made the sounds from the previous evening. And although this may come as a surprise to many, there is solid evidence that supports Sasquatch can make a sound that closely resembles that of a closing car door. We have no idea how they are able to create this sound, however, it has been noted. I have personally never experienced this unexplainable sound deep in the woods before, and it definitely created some excitement. As I investigated the camp area, I did find a number of rocks around my tent that I couldn't be certain were there before. However, I did not see any major disturbances in the dirt surrounding most of these rocks, which to me suggested they could not have been thrown from any distance. Had they been, I would have expected to find disturbances in the dirt where the rock had landed and or tumbled. However, a small handful of rocks did have ground disturbances in close proximity to them that could have indicated the rock had been thrown. However, I can't be certain. I also spent a good part of the afternoon exploring the area around my camp, and I did discover an interesting collection of rocks, which to me suggested a toppled rock stack. There is a lot of evidence that supports Sasquatch will stack rocks to communicate to others of its kind, and although I would absolutely agree the most reasonable explanation for rock stacking is human activity, however, I have found a number of rock stacks appearing near my field cameras that do defy explanation. Also, I did find tracks not far from my camp, however, clearly they were bare. One track demonstrated a double impression phenomenon that I have mentioned on previous videos, where a bear's rear paw will land on the impression of its front paw, thus creating what looks like an elongated footprint. Though these tracks did not line up precisely, you still get the general idea. The audio is being reviewed, however, thus far no car door sounds have been captured. However, there were two significant thuds recorded near the tent that very much sounded like rocks hitting the ground. And also, upon reviewing the audio files from that evening, it was discovered that there is unexplainable missing data among these files. So today I've been spending quite a bit of time investigating the surrounding areas, especially around the camp. I'm trying to find any sort of physical evidence that could shed some light onto what was causing all of those sounds I was hearing last night, and I haven't found anything definitive in the area. However, I did note one thing in particular that's creating a bit of a situation for me, and that is all the nearby rivers and streams are pretty much bone dry. And this is very unusual because generally these water sources are flowing year round. So it is creating a bit of a situation for me because I am in desperate need of water at this point. So I am going to drop off all my equipment back at camp, and I'm going to grab a couple of items, and I'm going to quickly hike in to a lake that's in the nearby area, and I am going to get some water and get back to camp. I don't want to bring all my equipment with me because, one, I want to remain in this location tonight and see if we can have a similar encounter as we did last night, and I don't want to be bringing a lot of gear with me because I just want to get over there quickly and I want to get back to camp quickly because already I have spent a considerable amount of the day exploring the area, and I really have to get this water quick and get back to camp before it starts getting dark. So that is what is happening now. Okay, not an ideal situation, but we have water. So this will be enough to get us through the rest of today, dinner tonight, and probably through a good chunk of tomorrow. But it is unfortunate that there's not readily available water in the area, because generally in this valley, these rivers and streams are flowing, and it's usually not a problem. But this little detour today definitely cost a lot of time and energy, so I am anxious to get back to camp and cook up some dinner. Good morning. Well, last night I was up periodically throughout the evening and I heard absolutely nothing last night. I also got up at that strategic time of around 2:30, stayed up for at least an hour just to see if I can hear any sort of sounds or activity like we had the previous evening, and it was absolutely quiet last night, which definitely made the previous evening much more interesting. I also did get out and floor the area a couple of times to see if I could detect any animal activity, and I did not. So last night was very quiet. Now today the situation is we want to get over to where my cameras are situated. And the challenge that I'm faced with now is the water situation, because if I can't find water along the way to where the cameras are situated, it's going to be important for us to get out, meaning get back to the vehicle and head out of the area. The problem with that is looking at time-wise, I can't see getting to the vehicle until well after nightfall. So that's not an ideal situation for me. And ideally, I would like to find some water along the way as we head over to where the cameras are situated and then camp for another night in the area. That is the ideal situation. But water is definitely a concern, and I should be foregoing my morning coffee because not only does it dehydrate, but the water could definitely be better served in another capacity. But I'm definitely like my creature comforts, and I'm enjoying my morning coffee. So that is the plan for today. We are going to pack up, get on the trail here quickly, and get over to where the cameras are situated. Hopefully find some water along the way, and if so, we'll be camping in the area for at least another night, and hopefully we can have some interesting things happen throughout the day, and hopefully tonight if we do end up staying in the area again. But that is the plan for the day, and I am feeling a little bit of a time crunch, so I am going to get on with it. So I'm out in the forested corridor collecting my cameras and redeploying new cameras. And one thing that's really apparent is they had an incredible amount of water move through this corridor. There's a seasonal creek that comes through, and I've seen on camera sometimes that creek gets pretty torrential. However, what I'm experiencing now coming through the corridor is absolutely mind-blowing. It is clear that an extraordinary amount of water came through this area. In fact, I'm going to swing the camera around so you can see where the camera is positioned, and you can see it right there. But look at, clearly the water has come through here, and I have never placed my cameras in a position where I thought they were going to have any sort of challenges with the water, because the seasonal creek usually runs behind the camera and it heads down that way. But this year, clearly there was an extraordinary amount of water that came through the corridor, and a lot of the down trees and wood has been pulled down into this waterway. So it must have been an incredibly there must have been an incredibly heavy snowfall up here this year, which I had been monitoring the weather in the area, and there was nothing that led me to believe that it was anything out of the ordinary. But clearly a lot of water has come through here. In all the years that I've been working this corridor, I have never experienced this before. So it'll be interesting to see what we got on camera here. So I'm absolutely thrilled. I found a water source and I was able to replenish my supply of water. So that is going to give us at least another evening in the field. I have taken care of the camera situation. I have retrieved the memory cards from the cameras that were out in the field, and I've also deployed additional cameras in that area. So the work is done there. Now I get to relax a little bit. And the one thing I will point out is I did take a little detour. I came down an opposite side of the ridge line, and I came into another area that I figured was going to have more water, and it turned out to be the case. So it is going to take a full day trek to get back to the vehicle, and I'm thinking that if we have any sort of activity tonight that encourages me to stay longer, I may consider an additional evening here, but I do have to get home. I have some things to take care of, and my plan thus far is to spend the evening here and then trek out tomorrow. So that's the plan. The immediate plan, however, is to get my camp set up and to start thinking about dinner. So we have a perfect place. It's absolute beautiful wilderness on this side of the ridge. There is an abundance of water here, which is great, and a little cooler on this side of the mountain, but absolutely breathtaking. So it's a great place to call home, at least for tonight. After I set up camp, I had an early dinner and spent a couple of hours investigating the surrounding area. This side of the ridge has had a number of sightings over the years, and although it is at a slightly lower elevation than where I would expect to find Sasquatch this time of year, the area does have an abundance of water, and during my investigation of the area, it is clear there is an abundance of animals in the area as well. So it's been a quiet evening thus far. I have been doing some patrols around my camp to see if I can detect any sort of animal activity using the FLIR here, but so far I have not detected any. And it's been quiet up here. I mean, unusually quiet. So we are approaching the witching hour. I will probably stay up for a bit longer. The Sasquatch are generally very active between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. So I don't know if I'll be up that late just because it's been a long day of trekking, and I've got a long day tomorrow trekking as well. So we'll see how it goes. We'll stay up a bit longer, and maybe I'll wake up periodically throughout the evening just to see if we can pick up any sort of activity in the area. But so far it's been quiet. So good morning. It was definitely another quiet evening in the woods last night. Right now the sun is starting to make an appearance here. It is a little shy of 5:30, so the sun should be coming up here pretty quick, and which time I'm gonna grab a quick breakfast and pack up camp and start heading out because I have quite a trek to take to get back to the vehicle. So I am anxious to get home because I'm excited to see what is on the cameras that we have retrieved, and I'm interested to hear if there's any updates on that missing person situation up there at the Johnson Meadows area, because definitely it is a concerning situation, and I hope that she was recovered alive and well. So I'm anxious to get home and see if there's any updates on that. But it really was a great trip. It was really great to be out in nature for a few days, and although we didn't have any definitive evidence that the Sasquatch were in the area, that first evening was definitely interesting, and I'm interested in reviewing the audio from that night to see if I captured any of those curious sounds that I was hearing around the camp. So that is another reason I'm interested in getting home. But always a great time being out in nature. Just waking up to that smell, the smell of pine in the air, is really quite nice. And I'm not really anxious to get off the mountain because it definitely has been hot down in, even down where I'm at about 3,500 feet. But the Yosemite foothills has been getting up into the high 90s, so that's unpleasant. I much prefer the cold over the heat, so it's nice to be up here in the higher elevations. But a great trip, and we still have some work cut out for ourselves on this episode, and I think I am going to watch the sunrise. What a wonderful escape from all of the craziness that is happening in the world. A solo backpacking trek into the backcountry. Honestly, this trip has rekindled my spirit. To surround oneself with the beauty of nature is always a soul awakening experience, and although we did not find any definitive evidence that the Sasquatch are in the area, this region has had numerous sightings over the years, and I myself have had more than one encounter with Sasquatch in this area, as well as a sighting. And our first evening of investigations was very exciting, and could very well have been Sasquatch related. They have been known to make the unusual car door closing sound, and have been documented countless times throwing objects into camps, and my audio recorders did capture two very loud thud sounds in very close proximity to my tent that could very well have been thrown rocks. I know the Sasquatch are in this area, and they very well could be using this particular valley as their very own personal refrigerator, where they herd and corral deer for use as a food source. Although many of the creeks and rivers in the areas were waterless, there is accessible water in the area, and the elevation is very consistent with warmer temperature sighting locations along the Sierra Nevada mountains, and in conclusion, this area makes the perfect habitat for Sasquatch during the summer months. With fall rapidly approaching, the Sasquatch will once again be on the move as they start their descent to the lower elevations, which means there is still a lot of work to do in the field before the change in seasons, and there is still much concern over the missing person near my May 3rd incident site. And I also have plans in the works for a 3-day investigation up near Sonora, California, where my niece Allie hopes to join me for some Sasquatch investigating. As always, I would like to thank all of you for your continued support of my channel. Honestly, it is the support I'm receiving from all of you that keeps me inspired to continue my pursuits. Please be safe and take care of yourselves. And until next time, I'm Darrin Smith, and I'll see you here at Squatchspot.com.